big guy, Mr. 10%, President Biden and company, having a real difficult time dealing with the Hamas caucus in their party and the Congress, particularly the House. The Hamas caucus, the socialist Spice Girls, individuals like MFer Spice, Rashida Tlaib, Hamas propagandist Rashida Tlaib. She has posted a new video telling POTUS that she and they are not with him on this one, that he is supporting genocide in Palestine.
We will remember in 2024.
We will remember in 2024 you supported a genocide of the Palestinian people. Support a ceasefire now or don't count on us in 2024. And if you watch the entire minute-and-a-half video, that's mostly imagery, not audio, it's all of the Hamas propaganda combined with amplifying the intemperate protests that are going on in the West, particularly America.
Well, on Saturday, they tried to storm the White House, and they came up with a new name for President Biden.
Genocide Joe needs to halt his actions immediately and realize that he's going to face massive opposition from Democrat voters next election.
And it's interesting, too, because Biden has not exactly been a profile in courage throughout. They were slow to react. Then they reacted stridently in support of Israel with his nationally televised address to the nation. And then since, in the last week, as we talked about a bit on Friday with Brett Baer, it's really been watered down. There's a lot of equivocating going on and using euphemisms for a ceasefire like humanitarian pause. So is that more disturbing coming from inside the people's house, literally? Or is what we saw on the streets of Beirut, attendant to the first televised speech since October 7th by Hezbollah's terrorist leader Hassan Nasrallah? Now, again, I can't take what I saw on the streets of Beirut at face value. It's hard to make a layman determination about how much is propaganda. But listen to some of what he said in his hour-and-a-half-long address to the Muslim world, and some of the reaction you saw on the screen with certainly thousands, I don't know, maybe hundreds of thousands on the streets of Lebanon cheering on Nasrallah. Here's a little flavor of what we're dealing with.
We offer our condolences and at the same time congratulate you as your loved ones have won this honor, the honor of martyrdom. Those fallen martyrs have won, and it is sufficient to go to our holy scripture, the Quran, to read what God Almighty said about them, and we are entitled to take pride in them, and we must
take pride in the terrorist acts that were committed by Hamas.
Yeah, recruiting propaganda.
And then he issued this warning to the United States, and this is a concern. We'll get to this momentarily with John Bolton, but certainly this is a concern because the question is, will Hezbollah expand the war? Will this region become even more violent than it is at present? Here's Nasrallah's warning to the United States of sorts.
Development of events in Gaza. It is the first factor, the development of events in Gaza. That's why this front will devolve according to the nature of development in Gaza and what is required. The second factor that is in play is the conduct and the demeanor of the Zionist enemy towards Lebanon. And here, once again, I warn you not to go further, as many civilians have fallen as martyrs. And this will bring us to the same equation: a civilian for a civilian. Again, the demeanors of the enemy against Lebanon will be a factor in play. I am speaking openly, candidly, and at the same time with ambiguity, constructive ambiguity. All scenarios are open. All scenarios are open on our Lebanese southern front. I reiterate, all scenarios are open. All options are laid out, and we can adopt any at any point of time.
For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by John Bolton, former ambassador, U.S. ambassador to the UN, former assistant to the President for National Security Affairs, author of the book The Room Where It Happened, a White House memoir. John Bolton, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Glad to be with you.
So is that beating the drums of war by Nasrallah, or is it just saber-rattling?
Well, I think he almost used the American phrase, all options are on the table. That's clearly what he means. I mean, I think you have to put what's going on in a strategic perspective, which the White House has certainly failed to do, maybe unable to do, because it can't acknowledge what the real cause here is. And that is that Israel, one of our most important allies, is under sustained attack and threats of attack by a coalition of some of our worst enemies, led by Iran, but now, at least at the political level, involving Russia as well. I can't say I can see clearly what the Iranian strategy is, but I think they've gamed it out, and it's being played out. We don't have a strategy at all. The White House is just absent without leave on this point, worried about humanitarian pauses in Gaza when, in fact, Israel is directly threatened. Our Arab friends in the region are indirectly threatened. We are indirectly threatened, although American forces and other personnel in the region are directly threatened by Iranian surrogates. So Freudian slip. Biden can talk about all his efforts to get the war from expanding more broadly. We are already in a broader war, and our failure to understand that is crippling our ability to deal with it.
So Anthony Blinken visited the West Bank yesterday. What was the purpose of his trip?
Well, to see the Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the Palestinian Authority, which would purportedly be the group that would take over Gaza once Hamas is destroyed. This is another part of the fantasy, because they're still talking about a two-state solution, which died a long time ago and is certainly not something Israel is going to agree to in light of the October 7 attacks. I mean, I think we've got to confront the reality that for almost 75 years now, people have imagined the status of the people in Gaza and the West Bank incorrectly. You know, Palestinian refugees are the only refugees that got that way by hereditary status. All other refugees around the world are only the people who actually had to leave their country of origin to go somewhere else. But Palestinians have been made refugees for 75 years because, going back to the beginnings of Israel, the Arab world wanted to use the refugees as a weapon against Israel. Now, obviously, Israel is not going to accept them back, and the rest of the Arab world doesn't want them either.
Is it possible that Iran is using all this overheated rhetoric, like you heard from Nasrallah, as a misdirection play, that they're not really interested in expanding the war beyond Gaza? They're not really interested in providing any additional support to Hamas than they provide as a matter of course, and they're using this to buy more time to develop their nuclear weapons program while we're focused here?
Well, I think that's a possible scenario, and indeed, as I said, I can't say with certainty what their end game is, other than They want to inflict maximum damage on Israel at minimal cost to themselves, to Iran. Let's be clear. The mullahs in Tehran could not care less about the fate of the Palestinian people in Gaza or the West Bank, for that matter. This is all about the campaign against Israel. It's about the mullahs' desire to dominate the Islamic world. There's a lot going on in the background that I think the administration just isn't getting, and we're not talking about at the national political level. But the risk is that because we don't have a strategy, the Iranians can call the shots. Maybe they will escalate. Maybe they will unleash Hezbollah against Israel in the north. The fact is, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthi rebels in Yemen have been armed, equipped, trained, and financed by Iran, not for their convenience, but for the convenience of Iran to unleash when it suits the mullahs. What's happening now?
So if that happens, then what should our response be?
Well, look, I think the first red line that we have to be clear about is when Biden says that attacks on Americans are going to result in consequences for Iran. That red line has already been violated, and there's every risk it's going to happen further. And that's what his first concern should be, the safety of Americans. But second, Israel is our ally, and it is under attack. And to put obstacles in their way to trying to eliminate right now the Hamas threat, I just find unconscionable.
And those obstacles you're referring to are specifically what?
Well, the idea of a humanitarian pause. The Hamas leadership has been conducting this buildup under the pretense of living peacefully with Israel for years. And their deception campaign, their propaganda efforts, disinformation, was obviously enormously successful on October the 7th. Now we're supposed to turn around and believe that they're good for their word, that they're not using hospital basements to store ammunition and tunnels down into their network, that they're not using ambulances to transport Hamas fighters, and that all of the materials coming into the Gaza Strip will be distributed not to Hamas fighters but to the non-combatants. Really? We're supposed to believe that?
Should we be gaming out, and perhaps this is occurring privately, but gaming out more publicly, what happens to Gaza after Israel ideally eradicates Hamas in terms of governance? Should we be reaching out to Muslim allies, even dubious ones like the Saudis, to try to cobble together some sort of Arab-led coalition that would provide governance in Gaza after the fact? Or is it too early to do that? Is that even possible in a couple of different directions? What about the post-eradication of Hamas?
Well, I think if you don't address the fundamental question, you're just going to have a repeat of this over an extended period of time. Let's take the Palestinian leadership's statements at face value, that they consider themselves refugees, and that's the way they've been treated the past 75 years. It is fundamental refugee policy, enshrined by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees and many others, that where possible, refugees should go back to their country of origin. That's not going to happen here because Israel's not going to take them back. And if the refugees can't go back to their country of origin, they should be resettled. And that means finding countries that are willing to accept people coming from Gaza, which, as I said a few minutes ago, the Arab world is very nervous about. Egypt doesn't want them. Jordan doesn't want them. But somebody's going to have to take them. I think people should understand, before October the 7th, there was essentially almost no viable economic activity in the Gaza Strip. It's not connected to a functioning economy. And if you just leave the people there, it will remain disconnected from normal economic intercourse. For the good of the Palestinians in Gaza, they should go someplace where there's a real economy.
I want to talk a little bit about our border and border security here. In the last week, we had a 20-year-old Palestinian man who was arrested in the U.S. for illegal possession of firearms. He was in direct contact, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of Texas, in direct contact with others who, quote, share a radical mindset and was training with weapons to possibly commit an attack. We also had an incident where Border Patrol unknowingly released an African terrorism suspect into the U.S. after he was caught crossing illegally in Arizona on October 3rd. And a week later, ICE was notified by Homeland Security he was wanted in Senegal for terrorist activities, and then he was arrested in New York on 10/17. I know these are one-offs as far as we know, because we don't know what we don't know, which is also concerning. But what about this? Do these incidents speak to the sort of high alert we should be on? I mean, Christopher Wray has said so, but then the question is, what is Christopher Wray and the Biden administration doing about it?
Well, look, let me say first about Chris Wray. I think he's doing a great job as FBI director. I think he gets a totally bum rap from people who don't really understand how the FBI functions. He's been warning about the threat from China since back at the day I first joined the Trump administration. And I think on the border, he's been sounding the warning, as you've just indicated. Leaving aside the issue of illegal immigration, let's just put that to the side for this purpose. It's been clear for a long time that the southern border is a place where national security threats to the United States are very grave, and our lack of control over that border leaves us vulnerable. Vulnerable as well to the tide of illegal drugs that come in from Mexico, shipped there from around the world, and we definitely need to get more serious about it. This goes back a long way. You know, in the Obama administration, the Justice Department indicted officials from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard for a plot to kill the Saudi ambassador to America in a restaurant in Washington after they crossed the Mexican border into the United States. So this route for terrorists, for our adversaries, is very well known, and we have not effectively closed that access off, and we need to.
What about what happened here on Saturday at the Capitol? I mean, many were trying to tear down the White House gates. They're throwing objects at Secret Service agents, and why no arrest? Don't you think they crossed the line?
I definitely do. I'm a law and order conservative. I think anybody who went into the Capitol on January 6th, 2021, should spend a long time in jail. People who do what some of these people did illegally during this demonstration on Saturday should go to jail too. This. You know, you're entitled to any opinion that you want practically in this country. You're not entitled to try and disrupt the really functioning of government business. It's just not the way this should be allowed.
He is former ambassador to the UN, John Bolton, former assistant to the president for national security affairs, and author of The Room Where It Happened, a White House memoir. Thanks for joining us again, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Urgent Camp Lejeune settlement message. On September 6th, the government announced it will soon begin providing fast, guaranteed settlements to Camp Lejeune Marines, families, and civilians. Awards will range between $100,000 and $550,000, with an option for higher amounts. If you or a loved one spent time at Camp Lejeune and suffered cancers of the bladder, liver, or kidneys, leukemia, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Parkinson's, or kidney issues, you may qualify for compensation and could be paid within 60 days after accepting your settlement, with your VA benefits fully protected. You may be entitled to a significant